This year's FIBA Basketball World Cup takes place for the first time across three host nations, the Philippines, Japan, and Indonesia, from August 25 to September 10. 32 teams, 8 groups of 4, play in a bid to clinch the coveted Naismith Trophy, culminating in the finals to be held here in the Philippines, the country's biggest basketball event ever. Joining us now on Thought Leaders, Andreas Zagklis, the Secretary General of FIBA, joining us from Mies, Switzerland. It's good to see you, Andreas. Welcome to the program.
Good to see you, and thank you for having me on.
You know, the World Basketball stage finally returns to the Philippines after 45 years. That's a long time, so we're really thrilled to have FIBA here and in Asia.
We're also very thrilled. It has been indeed a long time. The excitement building up to our flagship event is indeed very big. In our recent visit at the draw, also with the head of state, with our federation, we could feel how everyone in Manila is looking forward to the FIBA Basketball World Cup.
Indeed, looking forward because it's truly unifying. The power and the spirit of the sport, bringing the world together to work so hard for something that we all revere. And you were just here, as you mentioned, in Manila at the end of April for the FIBA World Cup draw. Could you give us what kind of impressions that gave you of how it turned out and how you think it will turn out in, say, the next couple of weeks when the finals gets to Manila?
Of course, the lead up to the event, the road to the FIBA Basketball World Cup, is for us, I would say, very important, almost as important as the main event itself. And following a qualifying period of almost 20 months, starting in November 2021, culminating into the final window of qualification in February, and then to the draw, where we knew by that time the 32 participating teams. We have been able to promote our three host countries, to create the excitement around the world for what is the road to Manila, and of course at the same time to ramp up the preparations for the final tournament. So I think preparations are going very well. We have an excellent collaboration. We have a very strong federation in the Philippines. We have in Japan a federation that has just come out of organizing Olympics together with the organizing committee of the Olympic Games, and in Jakarta, an extremely ambitious and capable team as well, managing not only the event, the biggest event of basketball that they are hosting in their history, but also the creation of a new fantastic arena.
Yeah, that road too is really important, as you mentioned earlier. It's not just a road, but roads, if I may say. You mentioned Jakarta, and there's also Japan, Indonesia. It's a multi-city setup, and you're holding the World Cup for the first time. First of all, it's on site, and it's not just one, but 3 host countries. So that's a first. That's what makes it so unique. So what difference do you think that this historic multi-city setup will make to the staging of the event?
Yes, it's definitely a new model. It is definitely an innovation that the Central Board, under the leadership of my predecessor, Patrick Baumann, took 6 years ago. A bold decision, but this bold decision is already paying to the sport of basketball back the benefits, for the investment of trust that we made into these 3 countries. We have a very interesting mix. I would say we have Philippines, one of our traditional basketball markets, with such a high level of passion for our sport, has hosted in the past the World Cup, but as you said, 4.5 decades ago. And we're going back to Manila, a theater of many fantastic basketball moments in our history, in the history of our sport. The second co-host is not only 3 co-host cities, it's 3 co-host countries. And we go then to Okinawa, where we have one of our also traditional basketball countries, Japan, but not its capital. We have a new region, a new place, a new arena, very modern, where basketball is there very well established as well. And our third co-host, Indonesia, one of the most populous countries in the world, very fast growing in all aspects, in so many levels of industries, and at the same time also in sport. We have there an excellent commitment from the government, and that has been exhibited through the construction in the city of a fantastic new arena of the latest technologies. So overall, almost 500 million of inhabitants are proud, I think, this summer of co-hosting the FIBA Basketball World Cup. Will have the opportunity to live it in their country. And for us, bringing the event into Southeast Asia with Philippines and Indonesia, and to a part of East Asia with Okinawa, shows also the importance that we pay to the growth of basketball globally, but also in particular here to the growth of basketball in this region. There is no doubt we want to use this opportunity to bring more people to play basketball and to continuously upgrade the level of the national teams in the region and of their clubs that play in their respective leagues.
It is indeed a bold decision, and it comes just after the COVID-19 lockdowns that really kept the sport from growing. But I know that you've done a lot creating those hubs in order to keep the sport going. But do you think that boldness in the decision-making came because of the pandemic, or was it in spite of the pandemic?
I think we took several bold decisions around 10 years ago. One of them was a new governance of FIBA, being, I think, on the forefront of modern sports governance as one big association which operates as a worldwide corporation at the same time, but always not for profit, looking for the development of the sport. The other bold decision was our new competition system, where qualification to our top event, the World Cup, involves no less than 80 countries from around the world that dream to be one of the 32 that goes to the World Cup. That, coupled with the fact that just before the pandemic, we chose to have these three fantastic countries, had created for us an excellent structure through which, and circumstances through which our sport was ready to really take off and fly. And we said, when the pandemic came, okay, we hold back for a while, but this fantastic structure and unity of the FIBA basketball family allows us now together to build our response to the pandemic, what we called return to basketball. So this happened in a way that makes us very proud. We were the first sport to play qualifiers on all 5 continents when we had restrictions all around the world. And that also made our federations and our players much more confident on what conditions FIBA can offer to them. And that's why we saw last year the response in our continentals. We had fantastic Asia Cup, Eurobasket, America, and Afrobasket, Olympics, and now going to our flagship event, the FIBA Basketball World Cup, with all the best conditions for our players. And I must say, very, very committed organizers who see now what FIBA can offer to them, to the event, and to the growth of basketball in their countries.
So you've created that structure, the framework, well ahead of the biggest disruption we've faced around the world. You've detailed the opportunities, but talk to us about the challenges of holding the FIBA World Cup in 3 countries. I mean, that's a huge challenge, logistically, just to be exact. I mean, what sort of considerations have you made and the workarounds, just in case?
Of course. Coming out the 2019 World Cup in China, which was the first with 32 teams and the first that took us to the next level. And we're now planning to do 1 or even 2 steps further with Philippines, Japan, and Indonesia. Coming out of that World Cup with 8 cities in China, we saw what were the limits of our operational capacity. So for the first time, FIBA appointed 1 member of its management team as an executive director of the World Cup, placed in Singapore, David Crocker, who coordinates with the 3 LOCs. Very fast, we had to create the local organizing committee structures And I must say, this has worked in a seamless way because we have, as a global organization, the benefits of being understanding in the differences of cultures wherever we work. And at the same time, I must confess that the countries have been very, very committed from their side. I'm also lucky as a member of the FIBA Central Board to have as a fellow member of the Central Board, Mr. Pangilinan, leading also the organizing committee in Philippines, and Mr. Tohir in Indonesia, and Ms. Mitsuya in Japan. Three figures that have been fundamental for us to put wheels on the ground. And that it was not only a theory, this new structure that we operated for this new World Cup. We saw it also at the draw, and we will see it also in the World Cup itself, where FIBA will bring staff from all 5 regions, from all 8 offices globally, in order to service the players and the fans. And let's not forget that in Manila, we'll also have our World Congress with more than 160 countries being represented and participating. So believe me, Manila will be the center of the basketball world at the end of August and beginning of September, together with Jakarta and Indonesia. But this final weekend of 7, 8, 9, and 10 September, I think will mark unforgettable moments for the locals. And as it happened in my country when Greece hosted in '98 the World Cup, you always remember where you were when your country hosted the World Cup.
Talk to me about that unity, that commitment, because that's something that really got FIBA together with the rest of the stakeholders and the ecosystem, that unity, the resilience, the commitment, just to contributing to the success of this year's World Cup. What was it that created this unity as you now bring the national teams back to the fans?
I think there are 2 elements. One is the passion. And of course, we are an organization of 90 years. Last year, we celebrated our 90th anniversary. We've been, as an organization, not as persons, doing this for a long time. But the passion, I think, is combined now with a great deal of responsibility. And this responsibility comes when you look at the numbers, when you see we're the second most popular sport in the world, when you see we have, based on the data we collected after the last World Cup in almost 20 of the biggest markets in the world, we have younger fans than any other sport. Responsibility. We have a professional league in the US, the NBA, that is an example for professional leagues. And at the same time, when I move around in the Olympic circles, everybody says the FIBA NBA collaboration is an example of how professional league and the governing body can work together. So this responsibility does not allow so much room for losing focus. If you understand what I mean, we cannot lose focus, and that's what keeps the FIBA family united above all. Of course, the pandemic helped in the sense that one of the opportunities was we had all a common enemy to battle against, and we were first sport that went with a joint one FIBA protocol. I had ministers calling me saying from several countries, can we copy paste the FIBA protocol as a government policy? Other sports that we helped. So that is, however, what made us stronger. Now is the moment to really capitalize on all these changes and all this progress we have made. And I cannot hide from you that we're happy with the numbers we had in China, very happy. But all the indications we have on what is coming up now for the World Cup in Philippines, Japan, and Indonesia is an entirely different level. The growth that we saw, approximately 30% in our broadcast numbers, the growth that we saw in our social media channels, now more than 30 million people, we're still, of course, a sport that is being played by more than 300 million people around the world. So there is huge potential to untap. And for us, it is fundamental that everyone, especially the young generation, can associate themselves with what we're doing. What we're doing is a sport, a team sport that unites, that brings the countries together, and in this celebration of sport, everyone can see themselves understanding other cultures and becoming better themselves through an exciting on-court or on-TV experience. This is fundamental for us. And I have to say that in this process, we also had to diversify a little bit how we do business, how we do things. We created new lines of business with the esports. We have eFIBA now. We have a new Olympic discipline called the 3x3 basketball that was played in Tokyo, will be played in Paris. We are innovating further. We'll play next month the Under-19 Women's World Cup for the first time as a test with a glass floor instead of a wooden floor. So a number of elements where we say, cannot just stay idle and do things like we were doing them in the past. Now the pandemic is behind us. Now we have to really innovate, keep our young audiences very interested, keep their dream alive, because that we know where the inspiration comes from. The inspiration comes from being a Filipino, watching Clarkson play for your country. And it's the same when that happened to me in the 80s. That's how I got into basketball. My country hosted the European Championships. We had a superstar and Greece won many victories in that tournament. That's what led me and basically my entire classroom to register to a club and start playing basketball. So this is our job, to inspire.
Indeed. In fact, it is infectious. You go watch and then you want to play some hoops afterwards. You've just mentioned a couple of elements there of the 8-year strategy that you've implemented as Secretary General of FIBA. You've been in charge of developing and implementing this strategy for the cycle of 2019 to 2027. And you've mentioned some of them included in the agenda: advancing the empowerment of the national federations, shaping the global structure of the club competitions, and you've also led the first ever agreement with the NBA for a league outside of North America. Where would you say you are now in this 8-year strategy, considering that we had COVID right in the middle or at the start of this phase?
Yes, of course, we can use always COVID as an excuse, especially in our case, being in Beijing at the Congress, which is the AGM, the Assembly of FIBA in 2019, approving this strategy, and just 8 weeks later, starting to lock down our activities. In March 2020, we stopped our global activities for the second time in the history of FIBA. The other time was the World War II. But we will not, and we have not used this as an excuse. Yes, it slowed down some of our initiatives, but it didn't slow down, for example, our improvement on the club competitions you mentioned. We have relaunched the Intercontinental Cup that dates back to the 60s. It is 33rd edition in Singapore after the national team's World Cup. We'll have the best clubs of the FIBA ecosystem playing in Singapore together with G League Ignite. At the same time, we had on the continental level continued our progress. We have our Basketball Champions League in Europe, the Basketball Champions League in Americas. We implemented together with the NBA the first agreement of that sort that you mentioned between a professional league and a governing body for a continental league, a league that uses, I would say, the best of both worlds, and that is the operational and commercial expertise and excellence, I would say, of the NBA, together with FIBA's work with the federations and the leagues on the continent. We had a competition there already for more than 25 years that was succeeded by our new baby with the NBA, the Basketball Africa League, and giving the element of sporting criteria, because it is the champions that play in this BAL, and these champions are getting together at a very high level competition. And the objective is to find, develop, and keep the best talents in Africa until, of course, they can open their wings and make it to the NBA or other professional leagues that perhaps pay more. So in Asia, things are going well. We've had in the last days very good discussions for the FIBA Asia Champions Cup coming back next year. And below that, we have some initiatives. But what is very important for us is the power of the national leagues, like the PBA is in the Philippines or the B League in Japan, for example. So the strategy on the club side is on a very steady and good path. Empowering the national federations is for us business as usual, but now done in a bit different way. I must tell you, we are providing a toolkit to our federations like never before, and also financial assistance. And the job there is definitely to create the young players of the future, and to have in every country a professional federation structure that develops the sport. Where, as you mentioned, we have put a lot of emphasis, and it's our third pillar, is certainly women in basketball. And a strategic pillar very close to my heart, a topic that has been discussed for too long, but has not been acted upon for all that time. We have made there, I think, the biggest progress of all the strategic pillars during the last 3.5 years. And it is going to remain a strategic priority for us. It has two elements: women in basketball on the court and off the court. On the court, I think what has made a difference for us was the World Cup last year in Australia. The World Cup, the biggest attendance ever, 145,000 attendees in a tournament of 12 teams. The final, without Australia playing the final, 16,000 people filling up the venue. That was a fantastic moment for women's basketball. Having a global brand like Google partnering with us just for the women's event specifically, and definitely promoting the stardom of our female players, and together with them having for the first time majority female coaches in our Women's World Cup. I was also very proud that we have now increased the competence and the recognition and acceptance of our female referees, who are extremely talented. In Tokyo Olympics, we had the first woman officiating a men's game. And I can tell you, and I think that's the first time I'm saying this publicly, we will have in Manila, in Philippines, in this FIBA Basketball World Cup, for the first time, women officials in a men's World Cup. It's been too long, I think, and I feel it's already late, but we're making the step. And I think we will be seeing them gradually going up the ranks and officiating all the way to the finals in future tournaments, which happened in 3x3. A woman officiated the final of 3x3 in the Olympics. So on the court, a lot of work and a lot of progress. Off the court, we are preparing the administrators, the leaders, also communicators, excellent communicators like you, if you allow me, women of our sport, in our sport for the future, with big investments from our side. We had one of our partners, DCL, supporting this program. We made a global competition who would be the woman commentating the World Cup in Sydney, and a worldwide women in leadership program that is producing now its new talents, which I will need very soon, because FIBA changed the statutes, and in all commissions now we will have 30% representation of both genders. So I do need, and we do need, and I say need, not just want, we need more women in leadership positions in our sport.
It's just great to hear for the first time that there will be women officiators in the Men's World Cup. That will be a first. Would you have a number as to how many women, Filipino women, participating in officiating a Men's World Cup?
It will not be just one. It will be multiple, because this is not symbolic. This is based purely on criteria of performance. So they deserve it. I think at the moment there are 5 in the group of pre-selection. So we will see several of them officiating, but I cannot give you a final number because they are still under evaluation, like all others, in the next month or so, next 3.5 weeks to be very exact, before the final roster of officials is confirmed. But it will be more than one, and we will have the chance to see them performing. And I can tell you, you will not see any difference. You will see very high officiating, like always. And mistakes happen, and mistakes are committed by everyone.
So for the 8-year strategy itself, as a whole, with what you've just detailed, would you say that you're well ahead or in line, or still have some catching up to do?
I think in some areas we're well ahead on the innovation side. I think we went faster on the esports for the simple reason that for 6 months we didn't have so much else to pay attention to. So we really pushed the button, and I can tell you, Philippines has been on the forefront of this development. We created a working group of 5 leading federations worldwide, and the president of the SPP, Mr. Panlilio, is a very active member of that group, and Philippines did very well in the competitions we have organized. So that in that area, we're going quite fast, and I'm happy. Yes, there are other areas. I would have liked to do more on the women's side, especially on the side of women's club competitions. And we took the step of increasing the number of teams for the next World Cup in 2026 that will be played in Germany. It will go back to 16 teams, and we will have a longer and broader road to that World Cup that will involve more federations than ever before. But we have not been able to put this in place yet because we cannot play. So there are still elements that I really look forward to the next 4-year term starting when we close the curtain in Manila on the 10th of September.
In terms of the league games, I had a chat last May with NBA Deputy Commissioner and Chief Operating Officer Mark Tatum when he visited Manila like you did for the draw. He sits on FIBA's executive committee, and he did mention how he's working with FIBA in growing NBA outside the United States. How do you think that's gone on with how the Africa League games have gone? And do you think that can be replicated? That kind of partnership can be replicated in a country like the Philippines?
I should say, first of all, to connect with something that I said earlier, mentioning that FIBA underwent several reforms approximately 10 years ago. One of those reforms was to include a representative of the NBA ex officio on the FIBA Central Board, where the decisions are taken, and the FIBA Executive Committee, which is the shorter version of our board, supervising me and the Secretariat of FIBA. And that reform was taken also very seriously by the NBA, having the Deputy Commissioner, and I must say an excellent ambassador of NBA values and principles into the FIBA ecosystem, and vice versa. Mark has been and will continue to be with us for the next term as well. A great addition. I think you also saw when we had the fantastic discussions around the calendar of the NBA that was also impacted by the pandemic and would have potentially an impact on the Olympic Games. But the NBA played a shorter season, and the players were released in time to play the Olympics. This is, I would say, a result of a relationship that is deep and full of trust and confidence between both sides. This relationship has become also broader in the last 5 years. This has been also my job, succeeding Patrick Baumann, who had built an excellent relationship with Adam Silver, building himself on the legacy of David Stern and Borislav Stankovic. And we have also come institutionally closer by making different partnerships. I'm not talking only about the Basketball Without Borders that is there for 21 years, or for our global junior NBA partnership, which is seeing verticals in every country between the NBA and our national member federations. I think the BAL was definitely a moment of change and putting the next gear in the relationship, because it includes, of course, not only institutional, it includes competition elements and elements of joint ownership. And I cannot hide from you that on our agenda, frequently we are discussing several other markets around the world, not necessarily for the same model, but with different models. And that is the benefit of being partners for so long and so good partners that we can continue having our strategies aligned, which is at the heart of the partnership. The NBA, of course, wants to grow its brand and the following of the league around the world. We want to grow our sport. And these two things go together in parallel and very, very aligned, I would say. Would the future hold something for us in other parts of the world? Maybe, but it doesn't necessarily have to be with the same model as the BAL. We have a number of partnerships. The Intercontinental Cup that I mentioned earlier, which is our world club level competition. The G League Ignite has committed to play there. And this is for us one more element of partnership. So I see a number of opportunities coming up for us. This week, I think, or next week, when the Summer League starts, we will have several FIBA referees officiating in the NBA Summer League as part of our continuous work on officiating. We have also very interesting discussions on the rules of the game. And you have seen that in recent years, the rules of the game are coming closer. Yes, the three-point line is different, but it's one of the very few things that are different together with the length of the game and the length of the court. There are not many other essential elements that are different anymore. So this exchange of know-how, this exchange of ideas, and this deep-rooted partnership is I think an ideal platform for other projects. At the same time, NBA is very respectful of what FIBA and its federations are doing on a regional level, meaning Asia in this case, or Southeast Asia, and global level, and very supportive. So I think we are very happy with this partnership.
With the internationalization of basketball, could you share with us one or two standouts for you? I mean, the great players who helped grow the game of basketball globally. That's really inspired you.
I think you have to look at different levels for the internationalization of basketball. One is looking at the results of national teams and seeing that what is often called the rest of the world is a clear challenger now on every single competition to the USA. And we saw that in the last World Cup. We saw that also at the last Olympics. And I think over the years, the national teams in Europe or Asia or South America have shown their competitiveness. And I think Canada will also be one of them in the upcoming World Cup. So that is the national team criterion. There is also the criterion of what is happening in the NBA, where the number of players born outside the USA is increasing, but not only the number, it's also the performance, the quality of talent that is there. The last MVP awards were given to Europeans, were awarded to Europeans. We have players that are born outside the USA have leading roles in their teams called the so-called franchise players. At the same time, USA is producing fantastic talent. Let's not for a moment forget that. Then there is another criterion where we see at the lower level, the level of development, where we are very, very active. We do see an increase of level in our youth competition. I would say last year's under 17 World Cup in Spain, with a crowd of 9,000 approximately, was one of the best under 17 competitions that I have seen in my life. I think that was a fantastic exhibition of the improvement of talent that we have, also at a young age. And there is another indicator, which is how many foreign players we see in NCAA. The numbers are through the roof, and not only for men, also for women. This shows that there is quite a lot of good work done by our federations in developing young players. At the same time, we need to be very careful in constructing a professional pathway for these players that is robust, that protects them, and at the same time provides them alternatives in case the professional route does not work.
You were just mentioning there a couple of the headliners who played internationally and contributed to the growth of basketball. But when I'm looking at the Naismith Hall of Fame class of 2023, I mean, that is really a unique list, if I must say. 3 players just from outside the U.S., including Germany, France, Spain. We've got Dirk Nowitzki, who came over to Manila for the draw, Paul Gasol and Tony Parker. What does that tell you about the pace, essentially the pace of growth of basketball as a global sport?
Well, I think this is, this induction into the Hall of Fame of these 3 fantastic players is like the crowning of that generation. No, these 3 players, all 3 of them born between 1978 and 1983. They are the previous generation. It's not the generation that is now winning all these awards and trophies. What I'm really, I would say, proud of them, if I'm allowed to say that, because all 3 of them started in their local clubs, in the local federations, and went all the way up to being NBA champions, but at the same time playing every summer for the national teams. And I think all 3 of them give a fantastic example to the new generation on how the accomplishment for your career comes through being excellent on your club and making a lot of successes, wins, victories, championships, but at the same time being also loyal and there when the national team, your country, calls you. All 3 of them have played finals of Eurobasket. Gasol has a tremendous selection of medals, as you know. Nowitzki carried Germany all the way to semifinals of World Cup and finals of Eurobasket, and being there every summer. Parker brought France to the top of Europe, and he tried many times until he got there. All 3 of them are still active in the FIBA ecosystem. Dirk Nowitzki is the chairman of the Players Commission of FIBA. He is the voice of the players in our board, and I must say an excellent contributor to the projects of FIBA. Pau Gasol is our ambassador for the FIBA Basketball World Cup in Philippines. He will be also in Manila. He called me a few days ago, very excited for this trip. And he's also a member of the IOC, in charge of the relationship with FIBA, so very closely in contact with us.
What about Becky Hammon? She's also included in the upcoming Naismith Hall of Fame ceremonies in August in the 2023 class. She's a 6-time Women's NBA All-Star and is also coach of Las Vegas Aces.
Yes, I have to, I don't know her personally. I have to say, I think this is a very well-deserved honor for a fantastic career. And I had recently a discussion during our FIBA EuroLeague Women Final Four with a couple of our top coaches that are coaching FIBA clubs. And I said, listen, how can I help you? How can I facilitate from an institutional perspective the road for one of you to coach a men's team in the Men's World Cup in the same way that Becky Hammon has been so close several times to getting an NBA team head coaching position? I think it is very soon coming the time for one of these extremely talented women to lead a top national or club team. We had already a few breaking this glass, so-called, unfortunately the case many times, glass ceiling. We had a woman coaching in the America, a men's national team, a woman coaching in the Afrobasket, the African Championship, a men's national team. So I'm really eager to see who will be the first. And believe me, when this happens, and it will happen based on meritocratic criteria, I'm absolutely sure, because they all deserve it, FIBA will celebrate that moment and make this person an example for others.
And what completes the ecosystem for the sport really is the youth. And I'm going to go back to that, as you've introduced a lot of innovative initiatives down to the digitalization, as well as introducing esports and also Courtside 1891, the new digital platform. When would you say you've reached mass, maybe mass audience with the youth when it comes to globalizing basketball?
I think our job is to provide as many and as reasonable and credible channels as possible for the youth to be able to follow basketball and really get engaged with basketball. Sometimes I cannot hide this from you. I have interesting discussions with our team managing social media because we have to, as they say, we have to be edgy sometimes on the way we communicate, because this is how the next generation is communicating. They're not communicating the way I communicate with my friends. They're communicating in a very different way. They're not communicating the way we talk at the board. They expect different type of presentation of our sport. They're expecting a different type of allure to our sport. So I think for the next generation, it is very important that we have clear messages of what basketball represents as a team sport. It is very important that we have the narrative. People want to be closer to our players. That's why we've had now more access than any other time to our players. That's why we want to put their stories out there. How some of them started with a ball in the hand in the backyard and arrive now at being the captain of their national team at the World Cup. I think the next generation they are asking from us is inspiration and also high-level entertainment. I think the way that basketball is consumed is changing. I do believe that the statistics we have that I mentioned earlier, being the sport with the younger audiences, is encouraging. But this audience, by virtue of the rules of life, is changing every 3 to 5 years. So we will see in the upcoming FIBA Basketball World Cup bigger emphasis, for example, on statistics, bigger emphasis on the narrative, bigger promotion on the life of the players and what they do in order to arrive to the World Cup, things that the new generation really is curious about. And we need really to feed this curiosity, which is not only about what's happening on the court. Because I'm telling you, the TV production you will see in Mall of Asia on the final weekend will be like nothing you have seen before in a FIBA basketball event. The investment that FIBA is putting into this, the number of cameras, the number of shots, the number of the presentation, the AI elements that will go into this, the statistics, the presentation around the players will be like nothing else before. The critical mass for us, I would say, is when we have the feeling that, or perhaps one afternoon, one evening, for an hour during the World Cup, the world stops. That is what we want to cause as an effect, as a global effect. And I think we have chosen a great date. We have chosen great hosts, super passionate final phase hosts, and we have all the ingredients to get closer to that target this coming September.
Before we go, Andreas, you're quite a story yourself, an inspiring one at that. You mentioned you were a basketball player yourself for clubs Marusi BC, if I may add, and Milicia BC. And you were also a coach. So one would think that you'd go pro, but you chose another path. You decided to take your talents to another court, from the court of hoops to the court of law. Why?
Yeah. I don't think it pays justice to a sport after 2 minutes after talking about Gasol, Nowitzki, and Parker to talk about me. But I would like to just mention that growing in a country that loves basketball, I would not dare say as much as Philippines, but close to that, and in a period where the national team was doing so well. Of course, we were all going to basketball with a dream. Yes, I had the dream, of course, of playing professional and being in a club that was playing in the first division. Being there, looking at the pathway that existed was one thing. One lesson that I learned is the young players need to see the pathway. So that's what I could see. I didn't make it, but I did see the pathway. It was there for me in a federation that was working and continues to work super hard, like the Greek Federation, in producing players, and players that I played with or against made it to the national team. At the same time, the beauty of basketball is that it is such a well-developed and big ecosystem. It's such a big family that there is a place for everyone, I believe, that has this big passion for the sport. So when I got injured, and also it was obvious that I would not be a member of a professional club on the top 10 of the country, then very quickly the decision was there. I can dedicate my other talents into basketball, and the pathway was there. There were academic possibilities there. There was a pathway for a talent in other things to grow. It was a market where I was never an agent, but I was always a lawyer for players or clubs or even agents, representing what I believe is fundamental for professional basketball, and that is respecting contracts. And through that, FIBA found me. And that's also the good thing about FIBA. We tend to find people that love our sport very much and are good in serving it. So the pathway also there was clear. This is something, however, that we're planning to improve. We're planning to improve the options for the millions of people who do not make it to the very top. We know we have so many leagues around the world that can give you a very decent and good salary and have an excellent career for until your mid-30s, for sure. We have perhaps more professional possibilities around the world together with soccer than any other sport can offer. But there are so many others who cannot make it to that level. And one of the things that is very close to my heart, one of the projects, is our FIBA Academy. We will be launching at our Congress in Manila later this year our education portal, a portal where people that are in the sport and want to stay in the sport will continue having education related to basketball, even if they want to become a Secretary General of a federation, a GM of a club, or to work for a league, or to continue through officiating, through coaching, or other technical positions in the sport. So I must confess that a little bit of personal experience goes into shaping these programs, because we are a pyramidal structure, and we cannot lose the people who have dreamt so much about making it to the top and tell them, well, it may not be the top of the club or national team competitions on the court, but it may be the top of the court. And perhaps in that sense, I would accept being an example, but only in that sense, not in any other sense.
Very, very humble of you, but you've created the pathways that's taken FIBA from Jakarta to Okinawa and all the way to Manila. So we're looking forward for the players, the coaches, the referees, and fans to give it their all when the games begin. So all the best, Andreas. May we win for all. I look forward to seeing you back here in Manila for the finals.
Thank you very much. I also look very much forward to it.
Thank you so much. Catch us again next Tuesday, 9:30 p.m. Manila time on One News. You can also check out the long conversation on Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts. I'm Cathy Yang, and this is Thought Leaders.